Rich Fiesta is Executive Director of the Alliance for Retired Americans, and he has some things we should know about Fast Track and the Trans-Pacific Partnership and its effect on retired Americans. Rich, thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be back with you, as always, RJ.
Well, thank you for that. And listen, I wanted to ask you, because we're getting a lot of headlines about this trade deal, about the Trans-Pacific Partnership in the news and so on. But one of the issues that kind of comes and goes in the headlines is apparently now the plan in Congress is to take money out of Medicare to pay for part of it. And tell us what that's all about.
Yeah, this is yet another disturbing part of the unfolding of TPA, Fast Track, and TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, that in previous trade agreements there has been funding for a program called TAA, Trade Adjustment Assistance, where workers who have been certified that they have lost their jobs because of trade or trade policies, and we think there have been far too many of them, then are eligible for TAA assistance, which means help in retraining and finding work. Now, believe it or not, there were even people in Congress who even opposed that, TAA, of even having a trade adjustment assistance program, and that's led by Orrin Hatch, the Republican in Utah. But there are others in Congress who are saying, okay, let's have it. We'll have it for $700 million in assistance over 10 years or so, but we're going to pay for it by cuts to Medicare and to the provider's side within Medicare. In other words, that extending that sequester that nobody liked a year ago for Medicare, so we get these automatic mindless cuts, and they would take the money from Medicare and then fund this TAA program out of it. We think it's a terrible idea on so many levels, but there are folks in the House of Representatives have suggested exactly that.
So let me see if I've got this right. Rich Fiesta of the Alliance for Retired Americans. So first of all, they're telling us, just parenthetically, that this is going to give us jobs. It's not going to cost American jobs. But then they're saying, well, we'll have a little program for the American jobs that are lost, even though it's saying it's not going to lose any. Okay, that aside, which makes you wonder about the whole thing, frankly. Then they say, well, okay, we'll have a $700 million 10-year program, which frankly isn't a lot when you really think about the number of jobs we need in this country. But okay, job assistance program, trade assistance program, like they've had in previous deals. But now they're saying they're going to take the money out of Medicare, and it seems to me that's just robbing the piggy bank. That the trade deals have nothing to do with Medicare or retired Americans, or they do have something to do about health care. I hope we have time to talk about that a little bit, but not in a good way. So they're basically saying we want to pay for this. And by the way, if this is going to bring so much money into America, why doesn't the new tax revenue from all the money the corporations are going to make pay for it? But all of that aside, why Medicare?
Yeah, it's looking to where they can find the closest and easiest ATM machine or piggy bank or however you want to call it. But it's on its face absurd for a lot of the reasons, RJ, you just mentioned. And, if they can rob Medicare for a trade program, and I think you're exactly right, that the companies and, frankly, multinational corporations that aren't being asked to pony up anything, they're going to profit the most, aren't being asked at least to help fund a program for job displacement of American workers. So, here we sit at the end of May looking at this, scratching our heads, and looking at this circular reasoning and very poor program proposal that not only hurts Medicare, but also is inadequate for the job loss that will probably come because of these agreements.
So now, Rich Fiesta of the Alliance for Retired Americans, I was upset about this before. Now I'm getting really mad, okay? Because, first of all, they're going to Medicare, in other words, for the same reason that Willie Sutton, the bank robber, said he robbed banks, because that's where the money is. There's no other logic. Secondly, where the real money is in corporate America. They're the ones who are going to benefit, but they're not asking them to step up for a bill that will benefit them so much, and that for which they are pushing so hard. And I want to transition to another aspect of this. People who say, "Well, yes, we're taking the money out of Medicare, but it's the excuse me." It's the see how mad I'm getting? It's the provider side.
Right
so
ahead.
it means, doctors and hospitals and so on. So you won't feel a thing. Let's talk about that logic for a second.
Yeah, and you're too kind even using the word logic, RJ.
Right.
But we just saw one round of Medicare fixes a couple of weeks ago on making sure that doctors get properly compensated under Medicare rates to save cuts. And it was the beneficiaries who were asked to pay more, while the doctors in the medical profession are going to get a better reimbursement rate, but not having any skin in the game there. Now this comes along, trying to take money out of the provider side, and what will happen is when there are cuts on the provider side, even though beneficiaries in the short term may not be paying more out of pocket, services could get cut back. We see Medicare providers now not wanting to take new patients in the future, especially in smaller town and rural communities or poorly served inner city communities. Providers are disappearing in a lot of cases, not just doctors, but clinics, hospitals, and the like there as well. So there is a cascading effect to proposals like this that hurts not only Americans affected by trade, but anybody else who may be covered by Medicare. And that's 50-plus million people.
And that's such an important point because as we talk about it, it's bad enough for someone like my mother who's 91, wheelchair-bound, blind in one eye. If she has to go further in her urban area to get a doctor, that's a terrible, terrible burden for her to have to bear. But as you point out, in rural communities, it can make the difference between adequate care and inadequate care. So there is no free lunch in any of this, and this is a dreadful idea. Do you folks, with your conversations you're having, obviously you've got allies on this, Representative Keith Ellison and a Congressional Progressive Caucus are standing up on this. I'm sure others are on the Senate side as well. Do you have any sense of how likely this particular provision is to actually pass?
Too soon to tell. The Senate has been smart, or at least those who are for the TPP, in that they have a TAA program, but they haven't funded it yet in this manner. In the House, member you just named, Keith Ellison, and Raul Grijalva of the Progressive Caucus, Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, who runs the Seniors Task Force in the House with Congresswoman Doris Matsui, they are just this week getting a letter together and trying to get as many signatures on it of members of Congress saying this will not stand. Now, they're going on recess for Memorial Day, so I imagine early on in June when they're back in session, and if and when the TPP-TPA bill fast track comes over from the Senate to the House, we're going to see this as a hot-button issue in the month of June.
Well, we're talking with Richard Fiesta, who is Executive Director of the Alliance for Retired Americans, and before we go, I'm going to ask you to let folks know where they can register their feelings about this. But before we get that, there's another aspect of this deal that I'd love to discuss with you, which is this is kind of an outrageous, we've called it robbing the bank or robbing the piggy bank or whatever. This is an outrageous move on the part of some people in Congress to actually try to get elderly Americans to pay for a deal that's going to enrich corporations. But that aside, there are other ways in which it seems to me that this proposed deal and then the fast track authority, which the Senate just approved, potentially future easing the way for future deals as well for the next 6 years. It seems to me that there are other ways in which this trade deal could affect senior Americans, retired Americans, and I was wondering, I'd just love to get your thoughts on that and what people should be on the lookout for.
Yeah, there are extremely bad provisions on the leaked language of the TPP that give the pharmaceutical companies extended patents for their drugs. It makes certain drugs patentable, if I can make an adjective, that currently aren't subject to patent, so that would extend lives of the current patents, bring other things under patent, This means that the high costs of drugs stays high, crowds generics out of the market. Americans already pay the highest prescription drug prices in the world by far, and that hasn't happened by accident. And now we're seeing in these leaked provisions that the scope of the pharmaceutical patents and new drug monopolies would even be extended. As they say, nice work if you can get it.
Right. And I would assume, and I haven't thought about this, I would assume it would make it more difficult for the proposals that have been out there, for example, for Medicare to use its negotiating power to get cheaper prices on drugs, that might go out the window because a foreign company might be able to sue us over that. But all in all, it's going to, listen, I track this stuff on a personal as well as, for my mother, because I pay her bills, we pay her bill, as well as on a policy basis. It's horrific what we pay of all ages for medications in this country. That's going to make it worse. So there's nothing good to be said here, except that people, the more they learn about this, and unfortunately it does take leaks and so on to find out about it, because it's being handled in a secretive manner, the more they're against it. Where can people go, Richard Fiesta, to express their extreme unhappiness with this idea of using Medicare to pay for a provision of this bill and for the other provisions of the bill? How can people make their dissatisfaction known?
Sure. There are a couple ways, RJ. You can always check our website, www.retiredamericans.org, for information as well. But the most important thing I would say right now, especially in the coming weeks, is to tell your U.S. representatives, your members of Congress in the House and the U.S. Senate, your dissatisfaction. And www.senate.gov or www.house.gov to find your congressman or senator. They all have portals that you can type in a message to them. Of course, you can always call their offices as well. If you sign up with us, I mean, at no cost, but to get our email alerts too, we're going to be doing some when Congress comes back, that sending draft letters that you can then send to your congressman and senator as well, because being silent on this issue is not an option in our view.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I'm glad you're on this issue. We will stay on it, too. Richard Fiesta, Executive Director for the Alliance for Retired Americans. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, RJ.
We will be right back after this. I am Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour.